So we remember that every cell, no matter it's skin cell, nerves, or whatever, every cell is negatively charged inside, which means every cell is polarized, right? And we said for our neurons, the rest that negative charge is minus 70. So this is called the resting membrane potential. Minus 70 inside, minus 70 millivolts all the way minus 70, right? Minus 70 all the way minus 70. And that's the same with that. This is synapse number 1.
I'll just hold it.
And then this is synapse number 2.
Take your notes.
This is also called the neuromuscular junction or myoneural junction, right? The junction between the muscle and the nerve. Okay? And we said, what's responsible for the resting charge? There's a gate that's always open. What do you call that gate that's always open? Leakage. Leakage gates. So the leakage gates are very leaky, right? They're always open. But what keeps the gates are for 2 electrolytes, which are sodium and potassium. Very good. Which one is fast?
Sodium.
Sodium is fast, potassium is slow. Yes. And so where is sodium abundant? Inside or outside? Outside. So you have sodium abundant outside, right? And so the potassium abundant inside. So the leakage gates are always open. So there they are. They're always open. And to keep the sodium always out and the potassium always in, you have the pump that keeps pumping them towards their own compartments, right? That's called the sodium-potassium pump or sodium-potassium ATPase. We're going to discuss that worksheet, okay? So that's the sodium-potassium pump. Now, when there's a stimulus, any stimulus will result in opening of more sodium and potassium gates. But those gates have a name, right? We'll call it chemical or
Mechanical
gates. They are for sodium and potassium. But these gates, even though they're present there, they can only be opened by a chemical stimulus if it's a chemical gate, right? And mechanical stimulus if it's a mechanical gate. Raise your hand if it's confusing. Okay? You got that, everybody, so far? Okay? So let's pretend that the stimulus is a touch stimulus. So what gate will it open?
Chemical.
Touch.
Mechanical
Gate. So now I'm going to open more gates. They were opened because of a stimulus, so that's a mechanical gate. So now more gates open for sodium and potassium, right? Sodium is fast, potassium is slow. Which means sodium is wide open, potassium is just a little bit opening. Which means there's a lot of positive that will go inside. So the result of any stimulus is changing the charge inside. It will no longer be minus 70. When you change the charge inside, that's called depolarization, right? So a stimulus will depolarize. You're going to change the charge. You depolarize it. Okay? So now you understand the word depolarized. You understand the word polarized. Right? So the result is more sodium will go in. You're going to change this from minus 70, it will go down, right? It will become less negative. because lots of positive goes in until you hit minus 55. What is this number? This is called the threshold. So here at the axon, the trigger zone, the axon hillock, like a hill, the trigger zone, when this part reaches minus 55, it's going to fire an action potential. Here in the axon, you don't need a stimulus. You just need the charge, right? The gates here are also for sodium and potassium, but they're called voltage gates, right? So the two gates that you find in the axon are your leakage and voltage gates. So sodium will keep going in, and it's step by step, right? First, this was minus 70. This one right here becomes minus 60, minus 55, minus up to positive 30, right? It just moves step by step by step. Okay, that's how it like water, right? The water, it will start from here and then it slowly move, or fire slowly go that way. Same thing here. It starts with minus 70, then eventually it will hit positive 30. What's positive 30? The peak of action potential, right? That's the signal for the two gates to start closing up. But sodium is fast, potassium is slow. So when sodium is completely closed, no more sodium can go in, but potassium is still coming out, right? And that's how you repolarize. After the peak, now you have to start repolarizing. And that happens because the gates now start closing. Here, in the depolarize, they open. When you repolarize, they close. Okay? But again, sodium is fast, potassium is slow. So no more sodium goes in, but potassium can trickle out. That means you can get rid of the positive until you go back to minus 70. In fact, they over hyperpolarize. Go back to minus 90 until it goes down to minus 70. But we don't worry about it. Just go back to minus 70. Okay? Now, when you get to this part, I said there's another gate here that opens up, right? What's stored here are the neurotransmitters, but the gate here is what you call calcium gates. So you need calcium here. Calcium has to go inside to bring. So I imagine like calcium like a little usher, and it's holding on to the neurotransmitters. So that's how the neurotransmitters come out. Calcium has to go in, bring them out. In fact, you also need calcium to put them back in. So people with hypocalcemia, and you're gonna have that when you start working in the ER, you're gonna have a lot of late night individuals coming in because they can't control their shakiness. It's just hypocalcemia. You need calcium to release the neurotransmitter, which they had, but now they don't have calcium to put them back inside. And so that's why they develop them. Just give them calcium. Okay? So if the neurotransmitter was an excitatory neurotransmitter, what's gonna happen here? If it's an excitatory neurotransmitter, what do you want to happen to neuron number 2?
Gates to open?
Do you want that to generate action potential or no?
Yes.
Yes. So you're gonna open gates, right? What gate?
Leakage gate.
So leakage gates are always open.
So then,
Chemical gates, right? So all the neurons always have leakage gates. They're always open all the way here. This one also has leakage gates, right? It's always open. But now, secondary to a neurotransmitter, these neurotransmitters will open chemical gates. Please note that of all the 3 types of neurons, you have sensory, you have motor, and interneuron. Only sensory neurons can have mechanical gates, right? I think it's impossible for an interneuron is in between. You can't physically touch this. The only one that you can physically touch or respond to pressure will be the one that's exposed. That's the sensory neuron. And then the motor neuron, even though they're also in the peripheral nervous system, there's the motor neuron. This is a motor because it's stimulating the muscle to contract. You notice what's exposed to the muscle area is the axon part. So this one, the motor neuron, only must have chemical gates also. It's impossible to touch. So only sensory neurons will have mechanical gates. Jenny.
Is a neurotransmitter the same thing as a neuron?
A neurotransmitter is the chemical that's stored here. The neuron is this one.
Oh, yes.
Okay? It's the chemical that's stored. So that's how they communicate with the next one. Okay?
I'm sorry, you said there's three, so sensory, motor, and what was the third?
Interneuron.
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 Thank you.
So now we have an excitatory neurotransmitter here. Because it's excitatory, it will open up the same story, right? Same story, and it will generate action potential. Can you tell me the same story? What will happen? If it's an excitatory neurotransmitter, what will happen?
Chemical gates.
Open chemical gates, very good. And then what? Sodium goes inside because sodium is fast, okay? And then what?
Potassium goes out slowly.
Potassium goes out slowly, and then what? The voltage what?
Polarize.
It will depolarize, yes. Then it will go back, it will go down to what? Minus, don't write 55 only. Minus 55, which is?
Threshold.
Okay, and then what? Then action potential right here, which opens what?
Voltage.
Voltage gates. Voltage gates, right?
Okay.
And sodium keeps rushing in until what?
You reach positive 30.
Positive 30, which is called peak. Okay, and then you go there and you release. Yes, Vanessa.
Where does the pump come in? The ATP?
The ATPase is just it's responsible for maintaining the resting charge. Okay, so because we excited this, right? And this is the synapse, you generated an excitatory post-synaptic potential, EPSP, right? Okay, what if the neurotransmitter was an inhibitor neurotransmitter? Let's look at what will happen. If the neurotransmitter that's released was an inhibitor neurotransmitter, for example, Botox, it's inhibitory, right? Or GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, or lidocaine, the anesthetics, they're inhibitory. So let's think, because neurotransmitters will open gates. But let's look at the gates, right? We have sodium, which is abundant here. We have potassium, which is abundant here. Think, an inhibitor neurotransmitter, what do you think will it do? Will it make the postsynaptic neuron more negative or less negative? I think more negative, right? If you make it less negative, you're depolarizing.
And that goes.
Right? Less negatives means negative minus 70 to minus 55. That's less negative, right? That's an excitatory neurotransmitter. If it's an inhibitor neurotransmitter, it will go the other direction. From minus 70, minus 71, minus 72, more negative. If it's more negative here, it's harder to stimulate this one. And that's the job of inhibitor neurotransmitter. Right? You got that? One more time, inhibitor neurotransmitter you want will produce a what? More negative or less negative?
More
More
negative.
negative.
And that's called hyperpolarized.
Wait, what's the last slide?
So an inhibitory neurotransmitter will hyperpolarize the neuron or make it more negative. So let's look at these two gates. What do you think? Will an inhibitor neurotransmitter open sodium gates? Very good. No, why?
It's really trying to stop it.
It's supposed, if you add more sodium, it's not going to hyperpolarize, right? Right? You start with minus 70. Inhibitory means you're gonna make it more negative, right?
Mhm.
You make it up to maybe minus 90. You just want to make it more negative. So if we open sodium gates, that defeats, right? You're gonna stimulate it. So no sodium gates open from inhibitor neurotransmitter. Did you get that so far? You got that, everybody? Yeah? Okay. Yes. Again, what we want with an inhibitor neurotransmitter is hyperpolarized. We're talking about inhibitor, right? Hyperpolarized means you want it to become more negative. The starting resting potential of any neuron is minus 70. So maybe you want it to become minus 80, you want it to become more negative. If we open sodium gates, sodium goes in, will it become more negative or less? It will become less. So an inhibitor neurotransmitter does not open sodium gates. Will an inhibitor neurotransmitter open potassium gates? What do you think?
Mm.
Yes? Yes? No? Maybe? Tomorrow? Sometime? What do you think? Yes, right?
Yes.
If potassium is more abundant inside, and I open potassium gates, what's the tendency? Potassium will trickle out. If potassium trickles out, won't that make it more negative inside? Right? Okay. So don't forget, inhibitor neurotransmitters will not open sodium, but it will open potassium. Potassium will leak out, leaving it more negative inside. There's another gate that it opens. Okay? You know, wherever there's sodium, it ionic bonds always with chloride, right? So chloride is also the most abundant anion outside the cell. Okay? Which means there will be chloride gates that can be opened by an inhibitor neurotransmitter. Chloride will rush in, you make it more negative. So what did you produce? You produced an inhibitory post-synaptic potential, an IPSP. Okay?
That's only when it's an inhibitor. You produce the IPSP.
Yes. An inhibitory neurotransmitter will produce an IPSP. It's a potential, but it's an inhibitory potential, right?
What does that stand for again?
Inhibitory post-synaptic potential. Okay? Did you get that? So now what happened? It became more negative. It's hyperpolarized. Do you think this will fire? Will this generate action potential? No, right? It'll take a longer time to generate, right? Because you need to hit minus 55 for this to fire action potential. So over time, they will start leaking out again. That's why you have to keep When you go for dental procedure, when you feel the pain, that means you have to keep injecting another round of anesthesia if the procedure is not finished yet. Or when you go home and the anesthesia is gone, it's back to normal. You're gonna have you can feel the pain again. Okay? Did you have any questions on what we look at your notes? Let me know if you have any questions. Go over your notes.
Right. Was that a fluoride gate or?
Chloride, yep.
Okay,
Potassium and chloride gates are open
okay.
by an inhibitor neurotransmitter. Okay?
When you repolarize, that's only when the gates are closing.
When you repolarize, the gates start closing. Yep. So that's why I prefer to write on the board, because this can be a little bit difficult. But these are the gates that we were talking about. There's the leakage gates. They're open. They're constantly open. Random open and close. They're just constantly open. This one, the chemical gates or ligand or chemical gates, they only open in the presence of a chemical. And mechanical gates has to be mechanically open. And then the voltage gates, see, it's the change in membrane potential. There's no stimulus that needs to open the voltage gates. Okay, so we talked about that. Talked about this one. This slide is showing the comparison between myelinated and unmyelinated neurons. So if you look at this one, you see an unmyelinated neuron or a naked neuron. It's very slow. Whereas this one, the action potential, the voltage moves from here, then the next one to open is this one, the next one to open is that one. That's why it's referred to as a saltatory conduction. They don't want to use that word too much, because people may think that it jumps. It doesn't jump. It just, from here, the next gate to open is this one. But it doesn't jump that way. Okay? It keeps moving forward. It's just insulated by myelin. And that's why myelinated neurons help you react faster. I think in terms of reflexes, when you felt something hot, you pulled right away. I think those are myelinated neurons. That's why you're able to react faster. Okay? And what is the composition of myelin again? Myelin is fat. Okay? So do that experiment when you